Hi everyone, my name is Cindy Dumas and I'm the founder of the Women's Coalition. Welcome to our new online PowerPoint, The Custody Crisis, Why It's Happening and How We Can End It. I made this PowerPoint to help women and the general public understand why there is an epidemic of women losing custody and how we can come together to end it. First, a little about myself and my story. I have an undergraduate degree in biology and a master's in health psychology. After trying for 2 years to protect my son Damon from sexual abuse by his father, I gave up and fled into hiding with him and his 2 older brothers. After 3 years in hiding, a new judge promised she would listen to Damon, so we returned. But it was a trick, and instead she gave the molester sole custody and placed me on supervised visits. The boys were ordered into reunification therapy, where they were coerced into putting the abuse in the past and acting like their father had not abused Damon. Damon ran away at 14, and after being in hiding for almost 2 years, he got married on paper, which emancipated him without the need for a judge's signature. Damon now has a dual degree in English and Communications from UCLA and is now the Women's Coalition's Communications Director. You can read more about our story at savingdamon.com. Ever since our case began, I have spent an enormous amount of time researching, writing, and posting on social media about the crisis. Thousands of women have emailed me from around the world, so I believe I'm in a good position to recognize why the crisis is occurring and how we can end it. And I am passionate about ending it so women and children do not continue to suffer from this scourge in the future. There are 3 main goals of this PowerPoint. First, to clarify the nature and cause of the crisis. Second, to introduce our proposed solution. And third, to encourage the formation of a powerful coalition so we can demand and achieve an end to the crisis. This PowerPoint has 4 sections. First, what the crisis is. Second, how it is happening. Third, why it is occurring. And fourth, the solution. These sections are named at the top left of each slide. In the first section, I'm going to clarify what exactly the custody crisis is. There's a tremendous amount of misinformation out there about what is going on in family courts, so hopefully this section will help clear that up. In a nutshell, the crisis is custody being taken away from primary nurturing mothers and given to controlling and abusive fathers. What makes this a true crisis is that this is causing great harm in epidemic numbers. Millions of women and children around the world are being seriously harmed. So what is the great harm? It is the incredible pain suffered by mothers and children when they are separated from each other, as well as the damage done to children from being physically, sexually, or emotionally abused. Women and children are being traumatized, causing depression, anxiety, and other psychological disorders. They are being put at risk of substance abuse, suicide, and even murder. Sexual abuse occurs in a large percentage of custody cases and often causes serious and long-term damage. Women are being financially devastated and their careers ruined, and many are being imprisoned for contempt or abduction when they refuse to hand over their children to the abuser. Society is also being greatly harmed since millions of women and children are unable to reach their full potential, while billions of tax dollars are spent on the mental health, law enforcement, social services, and criminal justice fallout from these harmful custody rulings. It's important to look at the composition of custody cases because parents have different histories of parenting and different reasons for being involved in a custody battle. Mothers are almost always the primary attachment figure and primary caregiver. Their reason for being in family court is to attempt to maintain their primary role or to protect their children from an abusive father. On the other hand, fathers in custody battles are rarely the primary attachment figure or primary caregiver. Few are there to try and maintain a primary parenting role. Abusive mother. Many want custody to continue to exert control or punish their ex for leaving. Many want equal or more parenting time, which reduces or eliminates their child support, or even gains them child support for themselves. A large percentage of cases, approximately 75%, involve substantiated or credible reports of domestic violence and/or child abuse by the father. In the second section, we're going to look at how judges are able to take children away from good mothers and give custody to fathers who don't deserve it. The best way to understand how judges are switching custody to fathers is to look at the pattern cases follow. Where there's a pattern, there's a problem. Judges appoint evaluators, minors' counsels, guardians ad litem, and therapists who steer the case to the father. Mothers are discredited when they report child abuse or domestic violence, and evidence is disregarded and concealed. Judges find mothers to be liars, alienators, mentally ill, or emotionally abusive. The most common tactic for switching custody is to find the mother to be alienating the children from the father. Ironically, after the father is given custody, he is often allowed to alienate the children from their mother. The children's primary emotional bond with their mother and the mother's history of primary physical caregiving are devalued, while the importance of the father's role is exaggerated. Mothers are disparaged in open court, while fathers are respected and extolled. A common strategy is to switch custody temporarily based on the father's false allegations against the mother, and then never switch it back. Women are being financially devastated, and many are being jailed or threatened with jail, and they are being threatened with complete loss of their children into complicity and silence. Children are often forced into reunification therapy, where coercive persuasion, or brainwashing, is used to get children to recant abuse and agree to live with their father. Resistant teens are sent away to residential behavioral modification camps, where they use prisoner of war techniques to break them. Judges violate laws and rights with impunity. Child protective services, law enforcement, and the criminal justice system frequently aid and abet family court judges in discrediting women and children and exonerating fathers. And finally, judges cover up their wrongdoing by issuing gag orders and sealing records. This makes it difficult for the media to expose the injustices and keeps the custody crisis under wraps. This pattern is proof the custody crisis is a systemic problem, and that it's not individual judges making honest mistakes or being unintentionally biased. This demonstrates that they are deliberately entitling and empowering fathers, discrediting and disempowering mothers, and endangering and harming children. In the third section, I'm going to talk about why the crisis is occurring. It's only if we are clear about the core cause of the crisis that we can come up with an effective solution. In order to understand why judges are giving custody to controlling and abusive fathers, it's important to look at the history of male control over wives and children. There has been a tug-of-war between males trying to control females and females resisting that control that predates the human species. This struggle originates in a conflict of sexual and reproductive interests. In other words, it serves males' interests to be able to control female sexuality and reproduction, while it benefits females to be free of male control. Women were able to resist being controlled for most of human history by forming strong alliances. But about 5,000 or 10,000 years ago, men formed more powerful alliances and prevented women from forming counter-alliances, which led to them gaining complete control over their women and children. This came to be known as patriarchy, which means literally rule of the father, and which underscores how men's control in the family is the bedrock of patriarchal society. Women and children were property of men, and they could take children away from mothers, abuse, rape, sell, or force into child labor. About 50 years ago, women finally gained equal rights under the law, which gave them the power to leave husbands and a legal right to custody. But in practice, men continued to maintain control of their children and of their ex-wives through their children via the family court system. It should not be surprising that men would create a system that would maintain the most coveted patriarchal perk, power and control over their women and children. The important takeaway from the history of male control is men have had the power to take and abuse children for thousands of years, and that power continues until today via the family court system. Another important factor in determining the cause of the crisis is to look at where in the world it is occurring. Women all over the world do not have power to keep or protect their children. In non-democratic countries, children are still property of men, so women cannot even go to court to fight for them. In democratic countries, the common denominator is the male-created family court system that bestows nearly absolute power on judges, so they can order custody to fathers, regardless of how harmful that is to mothers and children. So after looking at the nature, history, and prevalence of the crisis, it becomes clear that the core cause is systemic male entitlement. In other words, the family court system is being used to continue the age-old male prerogative to take, use, and abuse children if they want. In the fourth and final section, I'm going to introduce our proposed solution to end the custody crisis. In order for a solution to be effective, it must eliminate the core cause, not just the symptoms. For example, say you have a kidney infection and you take medicine for pain and fever, but you don't take the antibiotics necessary to kill the bacteria causing the illness. You will remain ill until that bacteria is eliminated from your body. That is why we must eliminate male entitlement. And that is why for many decades the crisis has raged on unabated, because activists have only been attacking the symptoms, not the core cause. Because the family court system is designed so judges can entitle men and discriminate against women, a new system is necessary. Piecemeal reforms within the family court system cannot and will not stop judges from taking and endangering our children. We need an entirely new system, a system that actually provides due process for all and ensures the best interests of the children are upheld. There are 4 major reforms and many minor ones necessary to ensure due process and the best interests of children. The first major reform is that custody cases must be removed from family court and heard in a regular civil court where there are stronger due process protections. The second is that judges' power must be restricted through the use of a jury as fact finder. This will help prevent the #1 tactic used to switch custody: judges falsely finding women to be liars, alienators, mentally ill, or emotionally abusive. Third, all the tactics which have been used in family court to switch custody to fathers must be eliminated. These include court-appointed professionals, substandard investigations of abuse, forced reunification therapy, involvement of child protective services, etc. Another extremely important reform is that the best interests of the child must be defined and codified. For too long, this has been left up to judges and other court-affiliated professionals. The Child Custody Act, aka Damon's Act, codes for a new system which incorporates these crucial reforms, along with many others which will help ensure due process for parents and protection for children. The Child Custody Act was written for the California legislature, but can be adapted to legislatures in other states and countries. In this new system coded for by the Child Custody Act, the jury decides 2 material facts: which parent is the child's primary attachment figure, and if either parent has neglected or abused the children. The primary attachment figure will receive primary custody, and an abusive parent will be restricted to supervised visitation, or in the case of sexual abuse, no contact. Research, experience, and common sense support that it is in the best interests of children to live primarily with their primary attachment figure, especially when parents do not get along or are in a custody battle. It is also in their best interest to be protected from an abusive parent. There are many solutions being advocated for that are ineffective because they do not attack the core cause. Training and educating judges have not and will not help because judges are ignoring evidence and knowingly giving custody to controlling and abusive fathers. New laws won't help because family court judges are able to ignore and violate laws. More court resources or legal help for women won't help because lack of resources is not why the crisis is occurring. Spending time and energy advocating for these ineffective solutions is not only a waste of time and diverts resources from fighting for an effective solution, it's actually harmful to the cause because it gives women and the public the wrong idea about what is really causing the crisis. It's important to discuss the misinformation that's out there about the crisis so women can recognize it. Some well-intentioned activists claim that it is the cottage industry and other financial incentives that are causing the crisis. But these are just symptoms. Men had the power to take custody before financial incentives appeared, and they have it in countries where there are few or no financial incentives at all. Ending these incentives will just make it a bit harder for judges to switch custody to fathers. Another misconception is that judges are giving custody to abusers, fathers and mothers, because they don't understand child abuse, domestic violence, narcissism, alienation, or other abuse-related issues. But the mishandling of abuse cases is just another symptom of the agenda to empower and entitle fathers. The crisis is not fundamentally about abuse. It's about the power disparity between men and women in the family, and women lose custody regardless of whether abuse is involved or not. There is also much disinformation being deliberately disseminated in the form of influence by the power elite and their right-hand men, the fathers' rights activists. The power elite inconspicuously shapes false narratives that benefit men through media, film, legislatures, judiciary, social services, law enforcement, and other elected officials. Fathers' rights activists actively spread disinformation and advocate for reforms that benefit fathers. At first they claimed family courts discriminated against men. Then they realized they could advance their agenda more effectively by branching out into gender-neutral territory, in which they claim family courts victimize both mothers and fathers, and also children and grandparents. They have created and infiltrated most family court reform and child protective services groups, as well as parents, children's, and grandparents' rights groups. But their agenda is the same: mandatory equal parenting, which gives them more power and gets child support reduced or eliminated. These groups spend considerable resources convincing women and the public the crisis is gender neutral, as they are acutely aware that if women realize discrimination is causing them to lose custody, they will band together, and that is what they are afraid of. In order to end the crisis, women must take back the power they had before patriarchy took hold. We can do this by forming a powerful international coalition focused exclusively on regaining the power to keep and protect our children. To begin to create a powerful coalition, the Women's Coalition is forming local groups which will be linked at the state, national, and international levels. These local coalitions will create solidarity, raise awareness, engage in activism, and gather troops for the battle for a new system. So I hope you will be part of the change and join our movement. To be part of your local coalition, email womenscoalitionintl@gmail.com. And every movement needs funds to operate, so please donate what you can. A $5 or $10 a month recurring donation will make a difference. There are links on our website to PayPal, Facebook, or you can send a check by snail mail. You can also do a Facebook fundraiser or purchase items through Amazon Smile. The Women's Coalition is a U.S. tax-deductible nonprofit with a Gold Star seal of transparency. Thank you for listening to this Women's Coalition presentation. I hope it has helped you understand the custody crisis better and has inspired you to join the battle for the power to keep and protect our children.